All right. Welcome everyone to our AZ Today's ABA for RBTs and student analysts. This is the first event of its kind for this group, and we're so excited to present to you this presentation today on reducing and mitigating RBT burnout, available for professional development units. So my name is Jessica. I am your AZABA host and ACE coordinator, and I'm here with these lovely technicians and BCBAs to talk about this topic today. So we're going to get right into it, but a couple housekeeping items first. We're so excited that this event will be available for PDUs for RBTs. You will receive instructions following this event for how to complete the quiz that documents your understanding and make sure that you learned something and took away those learning objectives. So make sure that if you're here for PDUs, that you're here for the entire time, that you do the quiz at the end, and then you also complete the survey, and you'll get your certificate of attendance and PDUs. If you have any questions, you can always email Aziaba. All right. And so with that, I will just kick it off. I'm Jessica. I am here as the supporter and mentor to the RBT and students group here. It's been a pleasure working with these ladies this year, and they have some fabulous information to share with you. And so with that, I would love to introduce Jamie Neville, RBT trainee. She has been a part of this group for the last year and an amazing supporter. I'd also like to introduce our guest, Savannah Groost, correct?
Yeah.
Um, Thanks. We appreciate her being here. And of course, our lead RBT student intern, Lizzie Wegley, who has been a RBT intern and then our student intern, and now BCBA and licensed behavior analyst. Congratulations, Lizzie. So with that, I'll turn it over to you to kick us off.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jessica. I'm Lizzie. I'm the lead intern with AZAVA. And I just got my BCBA 6 months ago, which is wild. But today we're talking about burnout. So just wanted to give a brief introduction on how we came to that conclusion, because there's so many topics we could have picked, so many things we could have done. So we did a survey at the conference, the AZABA conference last year in November, and burnout was the top one. So, a quick dictionary definition of burnout: it's the physical, emotional, or mental exhaustion, accompanied by decreased motivation, low performance, negative attitudes, etc. Very common in healthcare fields in general, especially ABA has been a hot topic. And as all of us have been RBTs before, so we wanted to share our experience and how we deal with it or have dealt with it, or maybe what we wish we could have done better. So I'll go ahead and hand it off to Jamie to introduce the first article that we looked over for this presentation.
Thank you, Lizzie. So the first article we went over was from Dealing in 2024. It's the role of personality in RBT burnout. So the study surveyed 126 ABA technicians in the US to examine how personality traits and workplace stress contribute to burnout. It was using validated measures of the Big Five, which comes from the Maslach Burnout Inventory, and also the staff stressor questionnaire. Results showed that neuroticism, extraversion, and workplace demands were strongest predictors of burnout. So with that being said, neurotic so sorry. Neuroticism directly increases emotional exhaustion and depersonalization, while extroversion and consciousness were linked
Okay,
to,
so,
thank you,
yeah, no worries.
were linked to lower stress of burnout. And the authors did find that workplace stress mediated many of the relationships between personality and burnout. And that stress and personality were more influential than hours worked or caseload ratios. These findings suggested that burnout prevention should focus on reducing workplace stressors, which will improve supervisory support and considering personality factors in training to better support our ABA technicians. So, with that being said, our first question that we're going to discuss is extroverted practitioners may naturally form stronger social support networks at work, which the authors suggest buffers against job stress. How do you think an RBT's level of sociability impacts their resilience in high demand environments?
Well, I feel like the more extroverted and the more willing they are to talk to people, I think it makes a much stronger network for the entire group, whether it be just with RBTs together or BCBAs or everyone intermingling. But it basically just kind of has everyone involved with each other and excited to come into work because you get to see your colleagues and you're excited to work with them. I feel like it just helps with making the days and the work go by wonderfully. And it really combats exhaustion and depersonalization because I think the more alone you are and the less likely you have like those colleagues, I think it really is a lonely thing, but it doesn't have to be. So
Yeah, I would agree with you, Savannah, that you you can find community within, our job. And with that, it's almost like if you're not an extroverted or not super social, once you find the people that you work with have like all the things in common, um, you may become like maybe a little more extroverted, but it'll build your social skills in order to prevent a little more burnout by building the connections with others.
oh, absolutely. I can say for sure because I'm not saying that you have to be extroverted to be in this
Mhm.
position. I definitely think when I joined, I started off as a big introvert. But I think the more that I started talking to everyone and the more that everyone was so willing to help me out and hang out and being like, hey, you're doing a really good job. I think it really brought me out of my shell and really come into work excited and just really looking forward to the kiddos and my coworkers and my bosses. It's really great. So I'm not saying you have to be extroverted, but it does really good people and really good connections go a long way.
Oh, 100%.
That's so great. Um, all right, so let's move on to question two, shall we? All right, so Lizzie, Jamie, Savannah, talk to me about with the construct of this study and the background of your experience. How could ABA organizations and employers support staff who have varied personality traits? You're talking to us about it could be helpful to be more extroverted. There are introverted individuals, but our ABA organizations are there also to support us, our BCBAs, the environment in which we work. What are some strategies that you've seen to be successful? What would you like to see more for supporting staff with those varied personality traits and their job development? And I'll kick it over to you first, Lizzie. Oh, and just one thing, everyone who's thinking, oh, where do I get these articles? We will have those available in the resources. So don't worry about that. We'll make sure to link them. Lizzie, turning over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So one thing that I've seen work really well in organizations is preference assessments. We do this with our kiddos and our learners and with ourselves. What do I want to eat today? Things like that. So thinking about what do I want that will be valuable from a colleague or a supervisor, thinking about team meetings. So the BCBAs I've worked under have brought certain donuts or coffees that they know specific people will want because they filled out a form. It is important to keep it ongoing though, because preferences change, as we all know. So I think because everyone is so different, everyone's personality is different. They're going to have different reinforcers, extroverted, very socially mediated, going to work is a little more reinforcing maybe. But for people that are introverted, thinking about a written assessment of their preferences just might be easier than asking them, because not everyone can just know what they want all the time. So yeah, I think that was a very important tool that I've seen work. Yeah, any of you guys seen anything else that might help?
Jamie, what about you?
So where I work, we actually have our BCBAs have us fill out like it's called like a stay survey every year. What do you like about the job? What could be improved? What's the best part? What's the hardest part? And it even has
Mm.
questions that are like, if you came into like $1 million and no longer had to work, what would you miss the most? So this is like another way to kind of like gain preferences. And it actually like in my experience, the BCBAs I was under actually took that really into heart. And they would know like when I'm struggling. I got to the point that I'd be working with my BCBAs and they almost knew when I was about to engage in burnout before I knew. And they'll be like, hey, let's take a little break for a minute. Do some of your breathing and come back. Or it's like, you've been working really hard. Let's go, you know, have you take a 3-day weekend. So just being open with your BCBAs, in my experience, has proven to show that they really know, they get like an interpersonal relationship with you and know how to help your needs tailored to yourself. And I really feel like that shows that they know our values, which can help improve workplace burnout if our needs are being met.
That's amazing. What a great experience you had there with thoughtful leaders who really cued into not just your what you were telling them, but what you were maybe showing them with your behavior. That's really thoughtful. Savannah, anything to add?
Um, I guess, I mean, Jamie honestly kind of covered it, but it's just individualizing different needs for each person, like whether it be for different communications, giving different kinds of positive reinforcement for the different working styles, and offering flexibility when, they really need it. It's just, it varies for everyone, and learning for everyone is really important.
I would also add to that, Savannah, that when our BCBAs show that level of interest in us,
Mm-hmm.
it shows that they care so much about their clients and the job as a whole,
Oh, yeah.
which is really cool because it's literally in the BCBA ethics codes that they have to provide the best care for their clients possible, and also they're responsible for the learning and teaching of the staff under them. So it's really cool to see when you can collaborate with BCBAs and they just know how to teach you.
That's amazing. That's great. Yeah, because the learner's always right, right? So, um, all right. So moving on to a little bit more about this article, Jamie shared with us that the article found that neuroticism showed the strongest association with all three dimensions of burnout: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced personal accomplishment. And just bringing us back to a little bit of Webster's, neuroticism is a personality trait characterized by a chronic tendency to experience negative emotions, including anxiety, depression, self doubt, and mood swings. So the authors noted that individuals that were high in neuroticism tended to overfocus on negative aspects of work environment. Let's talk about that a little bit. How have you all combated to your own sensitivity to stress as an RBT or a trainee? And Savannah, I'll start with you if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I wouldn't be lying if I said, um, or I would be lying if I said I haven't experienced burnout, because I have. But I think what has really helped me, because I really get sucked into my line of work. I love the kiddos and I love what I do. That sometimes that is my sole focus. But what helps with that, I think, is my own support system. Like, I have really great friends, I have a great family, and during my break periods, I do get to be with them and just hang out, just having that break. And I think another thing is, what has also helped me is, the staff around me. I think that's a really big one. They're really quick to ask if I'm all right, or if I need to take a breather. They're very reassuring, and that reassurance that despite needing that break, and despite like not putting myself to the highest standard, they're just like, hey, you're doing a really great job, and the kids love you and the family loves you. So it's honestly, it's the people around me. I think that has been a great way to combat the stress. But if it's not that, just taking those breaks or taking a small vacation, just um, putting myself first for taking that breather, because I think that is really important.
That's great. I think it is. It's so important. Emotional regulation and
Yeah.
coping strategies, right? We talk about that all the time. We teach that
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Do we utilize it? What are our emotional regulation strategies, our coping strategies? And do we have prompting hierarchies and prompting partners in our environments that help
Yeah.
us to do those things? That's very great that you were able to identify that. Jamie, anything to add to this?
Yeah, so I've been in the field a long time. And I feel like when I first entered the field, I was very timid, very like introverted, and I definitely um what's the word, aligned myself with neuroticism.
Neuroticism.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
No problem. It's okay.
Neuroticism, where I had a lot of self-doubts. And really just like Savannah said, being around the other employees and coworkers that were there to kind of also build you up or build me up. I learned to build them up. And with this being a mutual back and forth like build up, for the lack of a better term, I gained confidence, which really did help
Mm,
mitigate the likelihood of me going into burnout sooner. And I also
mhm.
learned like what works for me, especially if I'm with a kiddo in like a longer session. Um, First of all, if we have like a 4 to 5 hour session, we're not gonna force that kid to just do goal after goal after goal. They're gonna get breaks, right? So I found when the kiddo's having, their like 5 minute break, which I tend to give every like 20 minutes, depending on the age. It really depends on the kiddo. I take that time to make sure I get a drink of water or eat a little snack, or even like take some like deep breaths. And it even goes to like I make sure I use the bathroom because that used to be the biggest hurdle for me is I don't have time to even go to the bathroom, and that led to, decreased health within myself. So just making sure I have these little breaks embedded, not only for the individual I'm working with, but for myself. Because that way we do lead to giving our clients better quality care if we're not burning both of us out.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's so important to take care of your own health, right? We always talk
Mhm.
about how we can't pour from an empty cup, and making sure, yes, you are going to the bathroom. Yes, you are getting your water, especially when it's hot here in Arizona. And I love how you talked about, the reinforcement schedule and the, break schedule that you offered your clients. I'm sure, of course, within the
Mhm.
protocol that is designed by
Mhm.
the BCBA. So,
Yeah.
hot tip, RBTs out there, if you don't have a reinforcement schedule or a break schedule that you think is working for your client, communicate to your BCBA and ask questions about that. Say, hey, I don't know if this is working for both hit this clients and I's burnout. Can we talk about what the reinforcement schedule, what the break schedule should be within this very long session so that they can have a prescribed within the protocol so that you're following that and putting that in your session notes? Awesome.
Yeah, I
Uh,
definitely do believe that our BCBAs really do want our input because it's
Yeah.
ultimately their responsibility for the client to show progress. And we're like the frontline workers with them. We
Mhm.
know them better than anyone else on the team. So we
Mhm.
have to be communicating to the
Yeah.
BCBA what is working, what is not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did
Especially
want
with burnout. Go ahead, Lizzie.
Sorry, I did want to add just something that came to mind while you guys were
Yeah.
talking about neuroticism and focusing on the negative is something that's very easy in this field because there's
Mhm.
we're a baby field and there's a lot of hiccups and no workplace is perfect in any field.
Mhm.
So I have learned through being in different fields, talking to people, there's no such thing as a perfect workplace, and I think as an RBT, the more you can look for the good, like we do in our learners, differential reinforcement, the better you can make sense of your environment to be positive and to not get so stressed out and just kind of focus on the good. Like there will be bad, but if you notice all the good, you'll feel a little better. And
Mhm.
rapport, too, I think is something that isn't always taught the best. So having rapport with your coworkers is that social reinforcement that like Savannah was
Mhm.
talking about earlier, like the extroversion, like you can become a little extroverted by building rapport. So we like to use this saying I've heard at my work of like putting money in the bank and giving positive statements, giving compliments, things like that to your
Mhm.
coworkers versus when you have to give the corrective feedback, you're pulling money out of the bank and it's not as
Mhm.
fun. So just kind of
Mhm.
thinking about how can I make this a more positive workplace, and I think you'll feel better by just noticing the positive and building that rapport with everyone. And we do it with our learners, but I think as adults it can be,
Mhm.
BCBAs are known to have like misbehaved children and dogs. So, but, we
Oh
know
yeah.
positive reinforcement is such a powerful tool. So, trying to use that with other adults and colleagues at your work, I think can be a good uh, thing to combat that neuroticism and burnout.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely. And also just with that, Lizzie, um, I love that you brought up just the rapport building, because if we have HRE ourselves, happy, relaxed, engaged, it's more likely our clients will. Therefore, making
Mhm.
it a positive experience for us both. So definitely looking at the good can help us stay in that HRE space.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Definitely. We love that focus on gratitude. And there's lots of research out that to support that being a resiliency strategy. So, all right, moving on to our, I think, last question specifically on this article before we move on. Um, what supports have you all found effective for technicians who may be more vulnerable to burnout due to some of these personality tendencies that we've been discussing? Lizzie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I know for me throughout the past, 4 years in the field, I need clarity. That's something I need from supervisors. I need
Mhm.
rationale, and not everyone does. So I found out
Mhm.
not everyone is like me. So
Mhm.
at least in my experience, you know, having having that sensitivity to stress, I believe it could be mitigated by supervisors just constantly giving that clarity when they give feedback, when they change
Mhm.
things, when, just so we feel like we're collaborating and we're a team. I think that can really just be an antecedent strategy to a lot of things, but to those
Mhm.
burnout symptoms and, not feeling like you're in the loop. I think, I felt that way a lot. So just having the best supervisors I've had have been the ones that are just, they over communicate. And I think that's really important.
That's really helpful, knowing clarity and, you know, um, making sure that BCBAs are checking in and I think reflecting themselves on what may not be clear for different learning styles is huge. Thank you for sharing that. Savannah.
Um, well, like she said, I think the best method is definitely just having that supportive and communicative culture with your BCBAs and just overall with everyone. And I think another effective technique I would say is having a strict work life balance.
Mm,
Because, like I said, it's really easy to get lost in this position just because you just care so much and you want to help out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, having a strict work-life balance, like this is my work, and then at life you take that time to decompress. You don't really talk outside of your home, just having that space to just really relax. So that would be my two techniques.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jamie, what have you seen to be successful?
Yeah, so it kind of builds off of both what Lizzie and Savannah said. I also love all the clarity, because I'm very much an empath and I can feel just the energy of others when
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of stress going on. And it does help calm me when I know what the stress is about, because then I can start formulating fixes for myself. Even if it won't fix the whole situation, I'll be able to know how to take care of myself. But also, something that has really, I felt has helped is having not necessarily just people at work, but people in my life who can be a listening ear without judgment. Because I've come to believe in, this, 30 years of life I've had. Sometimes humans just need to say what they need to say and not get advice and just have someone say, I hear you. That is really hard. And then
Mm-hmm.
in our fields, like our BCBAs are likely gonna offer a fix or try to fix. So if you don't want them to fix, maybe just communicate that. Personally, a lot of my BCBAs will be like, okay, I hear you, and that sounds really hard. Do you want to come up with a solution to change things? And that gives me the leeway to say yes or no too.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, well, let's identify, are we in a venting session here, or are we in a I'm coming to you for problem solving, and
Mhm.
really operationally defining that for yourself? And sometimes we do just need to see that validation, right? Because it is tough. There are tough situations and you want to be seen. That's an important reminder to offer that validation. Thank you, Jamie. All right. Well, thank you, ladies. That was really insightful for your experiences, what you've seen to be successful strategies for mitigating burnout based on this article. Lizzie, I'm going to turn it back to you to introduce and summarize the next article that we reviewed in preparation for this conceptual talk.
Yeah, so the next article is about burnout and turnover. I found it really interesting. There's not a lot of research for RBTs. It's all BCBAs, which, you know, but
We're working on that.
yeah, I mean, it's a new thing. I don't think the credential's been around for too long. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah,
Right.
2012 or so, I don't know. I'm making that up, but not too long. I don't want to give out numbers that aren't true, but just a quick summary. So there is a small sample size, 11 RBTs. They were all in the state of Florida, were interviewed. They were in the field for 1 to 4 years. The researchers identified themes of burnouts in these groups. So those were challenges developing and maintaining competency, difficult working conditions, a transient or unheard of career, and dissatisfaction with the pay and benefits. All things that I feel like many RBTs have expressed either on Reddit, online, just talking about things that can contribute to burnout. They discovered inconsistencies with frequency and delivery methods of training, such as instruction focused training that lacks modeling, role play, and feedback, so not following the BST model. The authors suggested reducing the burnout in RBTs by strengthening RBT prep and BCBA supervision quality. They recommended the 40-hour training clearly explains supervision requirements, teaches RBTs how to address those unmet supervision needs, and give guidance on how to self-advocate. They called for graduate programs and ABA organizations to invest more time in developing BCBA supervisory skills, and for supervisors to use structured tools to identify and improve those weak areas. So to put it all in summary, our field needs quality improvement. And I think as an RBT and as a student, you have a lot of information thrown at you. But the biggest thing, especially I'm 6 months into my career, I feel like I can speak on, I wasn't prepared to be a supervisor. I was prepared for, working with the clients and, helping RBTs, but the scheduling and the supervisory parts and the leadership aspect, I've had to do a lot of outside work on myself to get those skills. And I think it's a big deal that graduate programs should focus on. But I'll go ahead and introduce the first question. So in the survey results, the RBTs experience burnout due to those unclear supervision expectations, limited overlaps, and they don't have the self-advocacy skills they needed. So to proactively address, as an antecedent, what specific skills or strategies could RBTs use to recognize when their needs are not being met, initiate an ethical and effective conversation with their BCBA, and request support? Savannah, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Well, I think a big key strategy would be first to monitor your stress and how you're doing, because I think identifying the signs of burnout early are really important because sometimes it will just snowball and you're there. And communication is key. So once it's apparent that the signs of burnout are there and that like you really need help, talk to your BCBA. And just having those conversations, like making everything direct and objective, I think would really like take out the fear of like not touching professional boundaries. But yeah, I think just monitoring yourself, see how you're doing, and just communicate, say what's on your mind. And I know for a fact the BCBA is willing to listen and willing to change anything to just help you guys out and the clients out.
That's so helpful. Thinking about, communication and monitoring of yourself. And I know that, this was guidance. You're talking about the supervision too, like not getting frequent enough supervision. And the BACB, after the RBT credential, we'll look it up and make sure we have the right date, was developed, also put in RBT supervision minimum standards, right? Because we were seeing this become a prevalent problem. And so, there's a minimum of 5% per month that's required to provide supervision. And it is RBT's responsibility and BCBA's responsibility to hit those supervision thresholds, but we know that's a minimum, right? And so even if you're getting that, that might not be what you need for that client. Lizzie, I'll turn it over to you for some additional insights on this.
Yeah, sorry, I was Googling. It says 2014, but that's why.
There you go. Yeah, not too long ago.
12 years ago. Oh my gosh.
When I started, there wasn't RBTs. I was a therapist with paper and pencil.
Yeah, so it's good to have those, procedures and policies that are going to keep improving. And there is such a high need in this field. So it's awesome that there are people like us that can feel lonely as an RBT. I remember. But back to the question, as self-advocacy, I feel like we need to operationally define it. So to me, like I would define it as describing concerns objectively, taking my feelings out of it. I like to say that a lot when I have problems. I'm like, all right, what is the problem objectively? What is unclear? What happened? And then what support? So having a solution oriented approach, I feel like is going to be the best thing to avoid a venting session with your BCBA or your coworkers of, oh gosh, this isn't unclear, this is hard, or this didn't go well. And instead of making it all negative, trying to have like, okay, this didn't go well, but what if we tried this? And having a solution oriented approach, I feel like we'll get more buy-in from a supervisor too when you have those concerns, and not just have that venting session and kind of not getting a solution. So being direct, specific about possible solutions, and just saying, I need you to model this. I need this BST to make sense. I've brought that up to supervisors in the past, and it's objective. I'm like, hey, you didn't model this. Like, I need this modeled. You can't, say, I can't, if I went to her with, like, you didn't do this right, or I don't feel prepared, then we wouldn't get it anywhere, or it would just be a little more tricky. And it might damage that relationship with that supervisor a little. So just trying to maintain that rapport with your coworkers and having that solution, I think, is a really good just skill to keep in mind when advocating.
Yeah, that's great. And it kind of goes back to what you all were talking about earlier and like the surveys of, needs and preferences of like, how do you learn best? And we all know BST is a very successful strategy. We all know modeling is very important. And coming to the table with modeling is very helpful for me. A reminder that we need to make that a part of our process because BCBAs can get a little fast in their protocol modifications and just say, okay, do this, do that, next thing. Remind can we model that? That's really helpful for me to know and learn. So Jamie, anything to add?
Yeah, so going off like what Lizzie said about keeping rapport and building rapport with your BCBAs, it is also, in my opinion, important to keep in mind that they're also human. And so they may sometimes have like off days, or maybe they're newer to the position and still learning. So it is important to be like clear with what you need, which we've already kind of touched on that. Um, and also, as Jessica said, using BST has been proven to be very effective. If you are someone that needs a little extra learning, it is always okay to just ask your BCBA, hey, are there any other strategies you can use to teach me along with BST? I've been given like fidelity checklists, where my BCBA comes up with, 3 to 4 different steps for like specific goals. And I would just, after running the goal, look at the list. Did I state my expectation to the client clearly? Did I use the correct prompting? Did I reinforce properly? And that also I found has been really helpful for learning, but most the time BCBAs are taught to just go straight for BST, and you do need to just communicate if you need a little something more.
That's a great point. Obviously, there's many methodologies for teaching, and we should be utilizing all the tools in our toolbox. Thank you for sharing that experience, Jamie, and kudos to your BCAs. All right. So, given the high prevalence of burnout for RBTs, given all these factors that the career really presents to the individuals who take on this work, let's shift to focus and think about, values and values-based approaches to addressing feelings of stress and burnout. So, let's go with you, Lizzie, first to talk about what are some things that RBTs could do to take a values-based approach to addressing their stress.
Yeah, I think I've been learning about ACT a lot more the last year. So it's very, very important to me to just identify your values. And one thing that I noticed or struggled with when I was identifying my values is I have all of them. And which one takes priority? And it's gonna vary every day. But the one thing that's important to me is integrity and the clients first and having compassion. So I'm going to feel better if I'm working toward those values at work versus away from them, like shutting down, being neurotic, maybe, focusing on the negative. So when I have those feelings of stress, they don't feel good. They're not toward my values. So I think of one thing I can do that will work toward my value. Where can I give a compliment, or how can I make this situation a little better? And yeah, I think too, valuing self-advocacy is something I've grown to have. That's important for my clients, for me. And the more I self-advocate, the more just reinforcing it is that I'm doing it, even though it's hard. I'm doing the hard thing, but it's toward my value, and it just makes the hard thing important and more likely to keep doing that.
Mhm, mhm. Savannah, I'll kick it to you next.
Yeah, honestly, going back off of that, I think just aligning your daily actions with your core values is something that I've kind of adopted into this field. Because obviously, I have professional boundaries where, I do things in a timely manner. I clock in, I take my notes, and um, I do every professional boundary in that way. But I also have my personal values like showing compassion and kindness, patience, and having integrity. Um, I
Mhm.
really, when I do that at work, I feel like even sometimes, though it's hard, it goes towards my personal values and feeling like, hey, I made someone's day pretty great. And that makes me so glad. And then there's, going back to self care. Um, don't and this is something that I've had to tell myself because I did struggle with self-care for a while. Make self-care a professional duty, not a luxury. Because I think when you are 100% yourself, you're there for the kids, you're ready and you're excited. Um, they're more than ready to hang out with you and learn with you. I think that is something that is very important. Make it a professional duty. If you are 100%, then everyone, including yourself, is really happy.
Okay,
Don't
we need to
you?
put that on a t-shirt.
Oh,
Self-care is a
sorry.
professional duty, not a luxury.
Yeah.
Next conference, the RBT podcast will be selling those
All right, cool.
t-shirts. That's fabulous. I think that's such a great point because we often, even if that is our value, that sometimes often becomes that back burner, thing that we do. But you're right, it is a duty to make sure that we are prepared and that we are in a good space to provide the best services for the individuals that we serve. Thank you, Savannah. That was pretty profound.
Awesome.
Jamie, I'll kick it to you next.
Yeah, I also really love that saying, and it just
Mhm.
hits home so well, especially because I do have the tendency to do all things for all people, and actually, in fact, like when I started this internship with AZABA, I was throwing out, I want to accomplish this and this and this, and Jessica and Lizzie were like, Jamie, let's rein it in. What's reasonable that it's not going to burn you out? So we did have to like pick and choose what is like A, most achievable, and B, what is most valuable to like us as interns that we can spread to others. So first, I just wanted to mention that I've got all the experience with doing too much for too many people. I think that partly comes from being an empath and maybe also being in a very large family with lots of kids around, um, being like little mom to all of them. But going back to like it's something I mentioned earlier with my company using that stay interview, it was that is something that was so valuable to me, especially at this one point in my career, because I knew my BCBAs. I always knew they looked at it, they took it into consideration with everything. But I had one very profound moment in my career as an RBT where I saw it just completely in play. Um, Although I do understand and agree that RBTs really ultimately need to handle their stress on their own and reach out for help as needed, there's also a time and a place your BCBA may step in. So this is just like a little part of the story. Um, the in 2023, at my stay interview, and actually it was pretty similar for all of them. Something I really struggled with, and it was very known, was I had a hard time like feeling hunger and feeding myself, and it would lead to just exhaustion before the end of my day and all the things. And that's just known throughout everyone. And my BCBAs would try to like be like, hey, take a bite of your snack. You might not be feeling your hunger, but when was the last time you ate? So that being said, I did have a very profound experience in 2023 in my personal life, where it led to me needing to call my BCBA, and be like, "Hey, I might need to take a little leave." And but I feel really bad. I just started with a new case, and I just kind of like just brought up all the things that like I'm gonna feel guilty for taking leave for myself. And she's just like, "I'm gonna stop you right there. You're gonna take your leave. you can take as much time as you need, and your job will be here when you get back. And because it was due to a very profound family incident, with that involves some like grief and stuff, they took into consideration my stay interview, and just everyone pulled together to make sure I was being sent like meals and like DoorDash gift cards to make sure I'm taking care of myself as I'm trying to process this event that happened. Because they knew that I was a valuable part of the company and just the field in general, that if I didn't take care of myself during this leave, I likely would not have been able to come back. I've gotten too physically ill. So they just I just love that they took that into consideration. So I expressed that I needed some time to process all of this, and then B, they took it a step forward to try to remove any guilt I was feeling from asking for that, and provided stuff to keep me healthy. So it was just an amazing experience, and I wish that for every RBT, no matter where you work. I want to believe that that could happen anywhere. I choose to believe.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing such a profound experience with us, and how your community rallied around you with you as a human first, right? And
Mhm.
looked at your needs, your hierarchy of needs, and what was most necessary for your health or your family, um, prior to kind of thinking about the job responsibilities. That's huge, and I'm so glad that that experience was yours to share with us. And it didn't go differently, because I think for a lot of individuals it does go differently.
It
Um,
definitely does. I also want to add with what you said about person-centered care. This really is a field of person-centered care. So just to like see that happen, not just with the people you're providing services to, but your employees, that's just what makes all the difference in the field, and just showing that we are a very compassionate field.
mhm, mhm. Right. We wouldn't say to our, client like, "Oh, you're having a crisis. Let's get back to work. You have a day."
Yeah.
Right.
So why would we do that with our team and our staff? And the compassion is so important, I think. I want to just circle back really quickly on the topic of self-advocacy as a skill, because I think that that's something that's very, and if you guys don't mind me riffing here a little bit, because you've also all mentioned, learning self advocacy, learning how to ask. Can you share with us a little bit about how that didn't maybe come naturally to you at first? We've talked about it as a value. Now you know that it's important to self advocate for your clients, and it's important to a self advocate for yourself to get your needs met. But how was that as a skill development for you? Did it come naturally? And what did it take to develop that skill? And do you say that you have it mastered now? Lizzie, I will kick
Yeah.
it to you first.
Yeah, I have had some messy conversations trying to advocate for myself in general, and in work, in life. It's messy. It's hard when you feel like you don't want to offend someone or say something the wrong way, so you end up saying nothing, right? Like, I don't know. My mom always
Mhm,
told me, like, maybe don't say anything if you don't know what to say, and I'm like, no, no, no. So we're gonna try, and it's gonna be messy and it's gonna suck, but I'm gonna get better. I think. Oh, am I frozen? Okay, I started
you're
breathing.
good.
Cool. But yeah, I think as far as my experience self-advocating, I've definitely come across as I don't know how to put it. Like judgmental. I think like some BCBAs have
Mhm.
seen me as like, oh, you're judging everything I do or criticizing everything I do. And I'm like, no, I need training. And I don't know what that training is because I'm new. I'm 19. I've never worked with a kid with this
Mhm,
disorder, that kind of thing. And, it can feel like I'm questioning them. And
mhm,
I think there's a way to bring that, questioning attitude to work in a way that's going to be received well. So I've just
mhm,
learned to I don't want to say the sandwich method because I think that was proven to not work as well, but when you're gonna, advocate for something that's not right at your work or something that needs improvement, I think you still should acknowledge the positive and the good. And it just, yeah, I think that's really the big thing I've learned, and I forget it all the time. I'm, just saying we need to fix this, and then I walk away or something. I'm like that wasn't helpful. So, yeah, definitely work in progress. And every situation's different. Every person is different, as we've talked about the last hour. So kind of just, having self-advocacy, but also that kindness and compassion value. I think they can coexist to kind of get you to make sense and in advocating for yourself in a way that's received good.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I think, what I hear is that self-advocacy can sometimes feel uncomfortable, and sometimes, you don't know how to go about it in the best way, but trying, and maybe even sometimes saying, I'm not quite sure how to say this, but I think it's important that we talk about this so that we can get to a good space. Um, Savannah, what has been your experience with self-advocacy in the beginning of your career to now?
Wow. Well, a lot, I think. I think for me, what that journey has been, and where I am now, and where I plan to go with this in the future, I think trust was a big thing, and self-advocacy, because I grew up with not a lot of self-advocacy in my life, and so I always tend to put it on the back burner, for reasons of I don't want to offend anyone, I don't want to upset anyone, and I just want to make sure everyone is having a good time. But yeah, I would do that because even like workers too that I used to work with in the past, there was not a lot of self-advocacy that I could do without getting in trouble or having any kind of say or just help even. I think when I got into this position was probably the first time that I ever felt like I could speak up, and it was in a way that was helpful, and I wasn't in trouble. And I think as far as like my journey with that, I'm like 95% I'm pretty healed. There's like that 5% that's always gonna be unsure, but I always push myself, and the people around me, my BCBAs, RBTs, they're awesome. So that's my journey with it.
That's pretty impactful to share, is that, we all have reinforcement histories,
Yeah.
right? And we all have a history of punishment and reinforcement that's impacting us now. And so, as RBTs, as students, it's important to share, those histories with others in a, obviously boundary way that that is appropriate for what you would like to share. Because your partner in learning or teacher could be it could be beneficial to them to know that history so that they know how to approach it. We talk about trauma informed care on the client side, and history of working and your history of your career. I've seen individuals have a lot of workplace trauma, to be I mean, it's a strong word, but I would say that they would define it as such. And to know that, and to make sure that you're walking in a space as a leader that helps that person to share when it might be feeling a little bit like that, so that we can change those reinforcement contingencies, is so essential. But it starts with that communication piece, right? And that self-advocacy that you all are describing. Um, Jamie, what about you? You mentioned kind of confidence being something that really, helped you to come into your own in your career as an RBT, but tell us a little bit about that journey of self-advocacy. Was it hard for you in the beginning, and where are you now?
Oh, it was very hard. And it is now, it's taken so, like, I'm just now feeling very confident in giving constructive feedback to others for to gain my self needs. And there's actually two very significant things that happened in my course of, I guess, being in this field. Actually, one may have been a little before the field, that have really just opened my brain into learning self-advocacy. The first one was way back when, like when I was in community college, just starting, higher education journey. I took an education class, and um, the one thing I took out of that class, and it sticks to me to this day, and this is probably like 8 or 9 years ago, is every person is a lifelong learner. And I've applied that to almost every area of my life. I can always learn more about this and that, except for self-advocacy until recently. I didn't realize that I needed to understand that self-advocacy was something I was always going to learn and improve on as well. So that being said, that really helped. The other thing that I actually learned a little more recently, probably within the last year and a half, came from my structured supervision. And one of my BCBAs brought up the Ellie Kazumi method.
Yeah.
And
We love Ellie Kazemi.
right. And I'm
Love
like,
that.
although what she was teaching me wasn't necessarily self-advocacy, it was how to like have harder conversations. That actually boosted my confidence so much. And I think I've actually skyrocketed in hard conversations, which B goes with my own self-advocacy. So um those two little nuggets of time in my life really has formed me to be where I am, gaining the confidence, gaining the ability to just say what I need, and then if I don't get what I need right away, continue to follow up. I would not have done that even like 3 years ago, 2 years ago. So
Wow.
yeah.
I love that you brought in Dr. Kazemi. She's a fan favorite here at AZIABA. We've had her many times. And, she does have a lot of really great resources for how to
Mhm.
deliver feedback and feedback, to superior, to somebody that you're supervising, is it's very important skill to develop, and perhaps maybe it's a future skill we can work on in our PDUs for RBTs. But that's it, it's really important to bring it back to that science that we have, and that skill can be developed. I think to your point, Jamie, it's a lifelong skill. I've been in the field now for 20 years. Don't tell the youngins, I'm not old. But I'm still working on self advocacy all the time, and expressing what I need in a way that is well received by the partner. And, so that's something that we still continue to develop. And it's not something that is, I think, as we've seen by this and just the individuals that we work alongside, that comes very naturally to individuals that we work with in this helping profession. Thank you for sharing your experiences. All right, we've had a great time here, but just to close out, I'm going to go around and ask everyone to share one piece of advice from your RBT journey, and your, young analyst journey, that you would share with a new RBT about their burnout, experiencing their burnout, thinking about your younger self, your early career self. What would you tell a new RBT? What would be the big takeaway that you would want them to kind of remember and stay true to, given all these strategies we've talked about, given all the research that you've dived into and your experience? Savannah, can I kick it to you first?
Um, I feel like if I were to give my younger self, when I was
Yeah.
18, I was 16 when I
You were
started.
16.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, I think we have to stop there and just see, like, we have a young field, and everybody should know that these skills are developing. This
Yeah.
frame of reference, but continue.
Yeah. So I would tell my younger self, well, silly one of the silly things I would say is you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.
Oh, that's
But
great.
um
No, that's good.
and then the second thing would be I would say keep going and keep putting yourself first, because I think that that's the thing that I really, really learned in this position. Putting yourself first and keep doing it because you're gonna love it. So
That's amazing. And then we're going to put that t-shirt together
yeah,
of,
yeah.
self-care. It's a professional, what did you say? A professional
Treat it as a professional duty, not a luxury.
self-care. Treat it as a professional duty, not a luxury. I love
Yeah.
it. Tagline. Jamie, what about you? What advice would you give your younger self or up and coming RBT given these strategies to avoid burnout and stick with it?
Considering a lot of RBTs start at a fairly young age, like, 18 to early 20s, and, you're barely going into the adult life, just then it's such a process to like find yourself as an adult. So just be sure that you know you're allowed to have a voice in anything in life, your job, just personally. And the more you can practice having a voice, the more your confidence will build.
Mhm.
That and just remember to love yourself, because you can't love others or love your job or anything if you don't love yourself.
That's amazing. I love that. Yes. And Lizzie, you've been on the journey of RBT intern to BCBA to now licensed behavior analyst in the state of Arizona, which is quite the journey. What would
5 months
you
waiting. Yeah.
What would you share with your younger RBT self and, future maybe RBT to analyst on, this journey of burnout?
Yeah, so many things. But the first thing that comes to my mind is, I wish I could go back to I think I was 19 when I started in the field and just say, like, what is your why? Like, why are you doing this? I mean,
Mm.
I could, think about my why back then, but it's definitely changed as I've seen the natural reinforcement of just clients and actually working and working with people and finding their why. I think that having that reason for what keeps you going to work every day, no matter what your job is really important. And, through learning more about ACT in the last year, I've just, kind of found those values. And I wish I had those sooner. I feel like it would have helped me in those times, knowing I could fall back on my why and what's driving me to get up in the morning. Because there's definitely days I've called out as an RBT because I'm just not feeling it, or there's low support at work. And it's like, why would I come with no support? Versus changing that attitude to, oh, well, I value helping and I get to help this kid and be his advocate. And so things like that, I think, were be very beneficial to my off days during those burnout phases as a young RBT, and taking breaks and just take the time off. PTO is not illegal to use, so definitely for any RBT, the first thing I'm telling them, use your PTO.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, to have my favorite quote is behavior goes or reinforcement flows.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah. So that's my sprinkle of advice. Yeah.
I love it. This is fabulous advice, ladies. Thank you so much for sharing your journeys with us and to give that, advice to RBTs in the field. I'll just take this moment to close us out. This has been a fabulous hour on RBT burnout, reduction of stress, and mitigating burnout. For those of you who are listening and or watching, please check us out for continued events. We are going to continue to provide RBT educational opportunities for our community. We hope that if you're not a member of AZABA, you join us. You can go to www.azaba.org and register as an affiliate. Check out if your agency has a member organization membership, and you most likely can get free membership. Encourage them to join as a member org, and you will have your membership taken care of. And if you're here for professional development units, make sure that you do complete the quiz on the objectives here after and the survey, and you will definitely get your PDUs in your system. And so with that, I just want to say thank you to these extraordinary team members here and advocates for our community. This was a fabulous conversation, and look out for more events from the AZABA today's ABA for trainees and technicians. All right, take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Guys,
you.
thanks for joining us, Savannah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.